Hi, I'm Aicpa, Executive Director of the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center.
And I'm Jonathan Liebert, CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado. And welcome to Business Week 2020. Thanks for joining us this week, and thank you to our presenting sponsor again this year, U.S. Bank.
So this week we've gone virtual, and we kicked it off with the License to Eat, a food truck guide. So you can eat great food throughout this entire week as we celebrate small business.
And you'll also hear from subject matter experts in the region talking to you about some of the things your business should consider in these strange and trying times. You'll learn about what you should be doing from a marketing perspective. You'll hear about how you can take care of yourself and your employees, as well as we'll take you behind the scenes on some new businesses that are opening up, like 3 East Comedy Club and our very own Olympic and Paralympic Museum.
As your leading small business organizations, the Better Business Bureau and the Pikes Peak SBDC will be bringing you the award celebration at the end of this week, where we'll be awarding the top 5 businesses in the areas of Small Business Champion of the Year, Small Business Person of the Year, Veteran-Owned Small Business of the Year, Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and Family-Owned Small Business of the Year.
We've got some great finalists this year. You're not going to want to miss it. And thank you to everybody for supporting small businesses in your Pikes Peak region.
This is Small Business Week 2020, Resilience, Recovery, and Results.
Welcome to Small Business Week 2020. I'm Jim Harris, U.S. Bank's Community Bank President and Commercial Team Leader for Colorado and Southeast Wyoming. Our friends at the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center and Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado co-host Pikes Peak Region Small Business Week, which remains the largest Small Business Week celebration in the state of Colorado and one of the largest in the nation. U.S. Bank has been the presenting sponsor for Small Business Week for nearly a decade, and we're pleased to return again this year. We know this has been a tough year for so many of our small businesses, which is why we partnered with our fellow sponsors to make this year's event free. Small businesses are the backbone of our community, and we want you to know we're here to help. We encourage you to join us for office hours with your banker this week to learn more about how we and other banks are partnering with the Small Business Administration to help businesses. Now we invite you to enjoy the free daily workshops, License to Eat food truck guide, and award celebration, all supporting and honoring the best of small businesses in Southern Colorado.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to 2020 Small Business Week in the Pikes Peak region. I'm here with an amazing panel of experts that we'll get to shortly. As you know, we've been coming to you virtually all week, and we're coming to you again today with this event called Office Hours with a Banker. This is a workshop that we're hosting with our presenting sponsor, U.S. Bank, and again, a number of amazing panelists here in a little bit to answer your questions about PPP loans, Main Street program loans, and other SBA initiatives that they've been working at U.S. Bank. Before we move into the panel, I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors for the week of events. Our presenting sponsor, U.S. Bank, we have lots of them here with us today. Our corporate sponsors, Kaiser Permanente and the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC. Our media sponsor, your fabulous moderator from U.S. Bank today, Sarah Gonzalez. She is the performance consultant at U.S. Bank. Again, after we go through a few minutes today, we will have a Q&A session, so please make sure you put your questions in the Facebook feed. Thank you so much, Sarah. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, again, a performance consultant, but also the president of the U.S. Bank Southern Colorado Development Network here locally, and excited to be moderating today's event and having U.S. Bank sponsor. I'm so pleased to be with you this afternoon and to have chances to introduce our panel speakers. We have Business Banking Manager Brian Lipp. On a wait, Brian. We have Business Banking Relationship Manager Joanna Abrat, and our SBA Business Development Officer, Joe Hemmel. He's waving in his heart there. Our U.S. Bank Business Banking and Commercial team will be discussing some COVID-19 relief programs available to our small businesses. And after their presentation, the panel is going to open up for questions. So please use Facebook Live event to post any questions that you may have. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming our three panelists. And Joanna Abra, I'll have you take it away first.
Awesome, thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Not sure if there's an echo. I'm Joanna Abrod, Business Banking Relationship Manager for U.S. Bank in Colorado Springs. I'm going to briefly summarize the Paycheck Protection Program. I'm sure everyone's quite familiar with it by now. And we can dive a little deeper into it later since we're going to open up the next 45 minutes for questions. The Paycheck Protection Program is a $669 billion business loan established by the federal government as part of the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. It was designed to help business owners such as yourself so they can continue paying workers and keep them employed. All banks and credit unions had an impossible mountain to climb when they decided to use us as a conduit to distribute the funds. It was definitely challenging in the beginning, particularly for larger banks such as us, such as US Bank, due to the massive amount of applications we had to process. I would like to commend all the other local banks in our community in Colorado Springs, since we know exactly what you guys went through. I do want to highlight a few of US Bank's accomplishments during this pandemic. I'm very proud to be working for a company that I personally believe took it a step further when the PPP rolled out. We were recently ranked number 64 in the Essential 100 by the Harris Poll, making us the first among all the other banks. Questions that they asked basically, did the company provide solutions to both customers as well as employees during the pandemic? Do you think the company had a good response during the pandemic, such as that? So I'm very, very proud to be part of this. We pulled employees from the regular job. A lot of us were pulled away from our regular everyday tasks to form dedicated teams that work day and night. We work 24/7, 7 days a week, so we can process as much loans as possible during this time. We gave all our frontline employees 20% hazard pay during the entire pandemic, and we provided overtime, all just to process PPP applications. We were burning the candle basically. Because of all these efforts, we were able to partner with nearly 101,000 businesses, totaling more than 7.3 billion. We were one of the biggest ones, impacting more than 910,000 workers all across 50 states who are feeling the effects of the economic impact brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm incredibly honored to have been part of helping facilitate this for the bank. And I think I speak for all of us at US Bank when I say we look forward to partnering with all of you and coming out of this pandemic stronger than ever. So I look forward to getting all your questions answered in a little bit. Brian?
Thanks, Joanna. Again, my name is Brian Lipp, and I have the privilege of being the U.S. Bank Business Banking Manager for the Front Range of Colorado. Wanted to just touch real briefly on the Main Street Lending Program. It's a little less known product or program that the Fed has put together. And for good reason, it is not as many businesses as it touches, but it can certainly be a good option for folks that it is applicable for. So the Main Street Lending Program in general is, again, a federal loan program that supports small and medium-sized business. And have to kind of categorize it. The medium-sized business per the Fed is much larger than a lot of businesses would be. But the general parameters are businesses that have 15,000 employees or less, and then in 2019 had annual revenues of $5 billion or less. One stipulation with this program is the business that applies for the Main Street loan have to be in sound and solid financial condition before the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. That's one of the main criteria. Inside the program, there's actually three separate types of facilities, or is what we call in the banking industry, or loans themselves. Fairly straightforward. The first one would be a new loan facility. And this is just essentially provides new, you could do secured or unsecured debt terms to eligible borrowers. Now, when I say secured or unsecured, that's really dependent on the lending institution that you're working with, whether it be U.S. Bank or any other bank that you might be looking to borrow from or with. The next piece would be a priority loan facility. And for the most part, it's pretty similar to a new loan facility that I just mentioned. It still provides, potentially new secured or unsecured term loans for eligible borrowers, but it's designed for those borrowers that are a little more higher leveraged or have more loans outstanding, on their balance sheet. The last would be more applicable for very large businesses, which is called the expanded loan facility. This allows borrowers, again, that you can't do unsecured or secured depending on the bank's credit quality or criteria, but it does, essentially it's adding additional facility or term loan to the existing facility they have, just adding an additional term loan to that. When it comes to pricing and how that's backed, the Federal Reserve created something that's called a special purpose vehicle, or SPV. Essentially what that means is if the loan's approved and funded, the Federal Reserve participates in 95% of the interest in the loans from whomever your lender is. Now, the main thing here, that kind of the meat and potatoes, is just what are the terms. So there's some positives, as I think I'll cover in a minute, and then there's also maybe some a little less positive, because there are some pricing. It's a little higher price type of loan, no matter what lending institution you use. But the loans, the pricing is generally in that LIBOR plus 3% interest rate. They're all on 5-year terms. Now, this is where some of the positives come in. For the first 2 years of the loan note, the principal payments are deferred. So there's no principal payment being made for those first 2 years. Also, in addition to that, for the first 12 months or a year, no interest payments need to be made. So essentially, for the first year, you're not making any payments. The other positive is, from a prepayment standpoint, a lot of the SBA programs that you'll have, traditional financing or SBA backed, will have prepayment penalties. The Main Street lending program doesn't have any prepayment penalties at all. So those are very good, attractive options to that. I mentioned earlier that these are kind of specific to certain types of businesses, and that really couldn't be more true than that I mentioned, because the minimum size loan for the new loan facility is $250,000. Obviously, that's larger than a lot of small businesses would need or could even pay for. Same thing with the priority loan. The minimum loan for that is $250,000, and the expanded loan facility that I mentioned is for larger businesses. The minimum is $10 million. As far as that goes, there is, I mentioned, some fees involved. And that's where it kind of kicks back to maybe it's not the best option for some different types of businesses, because there is a 1% transaction fee that is paid to the Fed SPV that I mentioned earlier, and then also a 1% origination fee to your lender. So 2% total, and that is the amount that is funded at the beginning of the loan, the principal amount. So with that, I'm going to stop there, because I wanted to just give a general overview and turn it over to Joe. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Obviously, you can reach out to your own lending institution if we're not fortunate to have your business. And also, there are very good details when it comes to the Main Street lending program on the Federal Reserve website. But I want to leave some time for questions, because I think we will probably have quite a few, depending on the number of topics we're covering today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe Hemmel.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining today's topic. I'm Joe Hemmel, the Business Development Officer for U.S. Bank in the Colorado Springs market. I'm going to talk about some of the SBA business initiatives that have come out throughout the year. Normally, they have a National Small Business Week, a National Veterans Small Business Week, and Small Business Saturday, to name a few. All of these SBA initiatives can be found on the SBA's website at sba.gov. During this time of the pandemic, the SBA and U.S. Bank are still offering traditional 7A and 504 loans. With the pandemic, there have been 2 additional loan programs added for small businesses through the CARES Act. The first one, of which Joanna spoke about, is the Paycheck Protection program, or PPP. And as you may know, the PPP program is set to expire on August 8th of this year, 2020. The second program offered by the SBA is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL. That's administered directly through the SBA by going to the SBA's website at sba.gov. You can click on Learn More button about coronavirus, and that'll take you to an area where you'll be able to apply for that loan directly through their website. This program is still up and running and is scheduled to close on December 30th of 2020. So you've got until the end of the year to apply for those funds. There are several differences between the two, the PPP and the Eidl loans. The term and rate for each is different. The PPP loan program actually has an interest rate of 1% with a term of 24 months for loans that have been originated before the June 5th of 2020 deadline, and then 60 months on originations after June 5th. The maximum loan amount for a PPP loan is $10 million. The Eidl loan has an interest rate of 3.75% for a for-profit business and 2.75% for a nonprofit. The maximum loan amount on that cannot exceed $2 million. So for the Eidl loans, the SBA has waived the personal guarantee for loans that are $200,000 and below, but loans over $200,000, the SBA may require a personal guarantee, just depending on the company and what's available. And the term on that Eidl loan can be up to 30 years, so it's pretty generous in that respect. A couple of the other initiatives that the SBA has done is, as part of the CARES Act, there's a provision that allows for all SBA loans that are currently outstanding to have 6 months of principal and interest paid directly through the SBA, including all current 7A, 504, and micro loans, or those are all included. The provision also will make loan payments for 6 months on all new 7A, 504, and micro loans that are fully dispersed prior to September 27th of 2020. So if you have a request and it gets funded prior to that, the SBA will continue to make those payments for you. Another SBA initiative is the fee relief for small dollar SBA guaranteed loans for veteran-owned small businesses. These programs this program is called the SBA Veterans Advantage Fee Relief Initiative. The program allows honorably discharged veterans, active duty military, active reservists, and current spouses of any veterans to be eligible for a no upfront SBA guarantee fee for loans of $150,000 or less. With that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah for some questions.
Yes, well, I'm excited to get down to the questions. I'm sure we have questions that everybody want to hear, and I'm going to get with the frequently most asked questions and kind of rotate through the three of you. So my first question is to Joanna Abrat. Will there be a second round of stimulus for everyone and who already received PPP funds?
Thanks, Sarah. So on Monday, Senate leadership announced the HEALS Act. I don't know if everybody was able to read about it. It's basically the Health Economic Assistance Liability Protection in Schools Act. There's numerous proposed changes, including to the PPP, which is basically, I think they went from 250,000 down to they're probably just going to go off like 150,000 as far as the forgiveness, automatic forgiveness, where all you have to do is do a good faith. You just have to fill out this form. But on top of that, they are talking about extending it. But as of right now, it has been passed, but it hasn't been approved yet.
Thank you. And then my next question, Brian, and this one's for you. Will my business automatically qualify for a loan under the program if the general program eligibility requirements are met?
So not necessarily. I mentioned a part earlier, I just touched on just a few minutes ago, that it's a federal program, but no matter what lending institution that you use, whether it be your US bank or anybody, any bank for that matter. The program has its requirements, but the banks also underwrite it to their own existing credit guidelines. So, and those can vary based off of the different type of bank, the size of the bank, et cetera. Whether it's a national or local. The banks themselves, who you apply with, you may qualify under the program itself, but maybe not necessarily with the bank, because again, they have to underwrite it to their existing credit standards. So that's a good question.
Thank you, Brian. All right, Joe, I'm going to hit you with some hard ones. How long are the economic disaster loans, or the EIDL applications, being taken for? And are they available, or the good loans to fund before 9/27/2020? Are they still good for those?
Yeah, so the EIDL loans they're taking applications up through the end of the year, so December 30th. As far as the SBA making the payments on loans that are booked and funded prior to September 27th, yes, that program is still up and running. So anything that gets funded prior to that date, we'll have 6 months of payments made for them after that.
Thank you. All right, Joanna, are we still able to apply for the PPP, and when's that deadline?
So Joe actually touched on this when he was presenting. So US Bank, today's the last one. We do want to finalize everything that we have in our pipeline. That's the reason why we decided that today is the last chance to do an application. So if you guys haven't done it yet, please go to our website. But as far as SBA, they are going to close it on August 8th. So that is when is August 8th? Like a week and a half from now? Oh, so next Saturday would be the deadline to apply for it. But as far as US Bank goes, we are accepting it from external applicants as well. You don't have to have an account with us, but we are closing that today.
All right. Now, Brian, many people ask this question: who is eligible to apply for these type of programs?
Well, we mentioned just a couple, but there are some additional criteria. First of all, the business has to be for profit. There's no nonprofits involved in this program by the Fed. Secondly, the business has to be formed in the U.S. There's various different legal structures that you can do, but that qualify under it. Again, I'd encourage you to take a look at our site. We have that available, so you can review that. And then also the Federal Reserve, or possibly or probably, if your bank is participating in this program, because some are not, and you actually had to be approved to do this and offer that in advance by the Fed. And then I mentioned earlier also regarding the business size, you have to have 15,000 employees or less, and then also 5 billion or less in annual revenues. So that's the general rule of thumb, but yeah, so that's the kind of the long and short of it. Also,
what happens if it turns out a business is not eligible for the program after receiving the loan, Brian?
Well, that is a little different situation, because again, it's the banks that are administering, but the Federal Reserve has to approve it, and obviously, they're the ones that are backing 95% of it. So the loan documents themselves, when you sign them, they do contain a mandatory prepayment provision, which will require that if the Federal Reserve determines that a business that obtained a loan under the program is breached, or they don't qualify for eligibility standpoints, they will be required to repay the loan in full within actually 2 business days. So you really got to be sure that you're going to qualify, and your lending institution needs to make sure that they dot all the I's and cross the T's, because if you take those funds and use them immediately, then they're going to ask for repayment if you don't qualify within 2 business days, which could probably bring the blood pressure up a little bit for the owner.
Perfect. And then another question that we just got in, and Brian, not to put you under the fire in the hot seat, but if the PPP loans are extended, does US Bank plan on reopening the opportunity to apply with them?
You're talking about the PPP loans now specifically? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I just jumped back in here, everyone, because I'm watching our Facebook feed and answering some questions. So specifically on the PPP loans, if the PPP program is extended because all the money hasn't been, loaned out yet, will U.S. Bank plan on reopening?
It's that decision's probably beyond my pay grade, but it's certainly something that we've done in the past because this was, as most folks know, this program was funded multiple times. And it's kind of a wait and see, I think, for all financial institutions, but certainly that's something that I can't imagine that we wouldn't be a part of if and when that does open up, which I think somebody mentioned that they're still working on that from a stimulus standpoint up on the Hill. They have about a week to do it. So I'm sure we will.
Thank you. And Joe, I think this one is for you. How can you describe or warn individuals to not double dip between the PPP or the Eidl?
Well, you can actually have both of them. You can have the PPP loan and the Eidl loan. The thing is, you cannot use, if you use the PPP loan for specifically for payroll, you can't get a loan for payroll for the Eidl program. So that would be the only caution that you'd have to watch when you're applying for both. But the Eidl allows you to do a lot of other operating things, as well as paying debt. It can have quite a bit of funds to be available there for just your standard operating costs.
And this is for anyone who can answer this. Can individuals fill out the AICPA forgiveness form and bring it back to the bank for certification, or is U.S. Bank requiring a U.S. Bank specific form?
I would say the same thing as the form that they had for the application. We are recalibrating since the Monday when they rolled out the HEALS Act and what it entails. So we're rethinking our approach and updating it. But at the same thing, what we advise clients when the application came out and we weren't accepting it at that time, just have it ready. So fill it out and then, so most likely, and I can't speak for the bank, obviously, it's going to be the same process. So fill it out, but we'll still be doing it digitally on our side. But at least you have all the information readily available.
Perfect. And then another question we have is, how does a bank certify that a business uses the PPP loan for proper uses so that someone can ask for that forgiveness?
Oh, I think that's going to be based on their providing the required documentation to show that they've used the actual funds for payroll or utilities or rent payments, things like that. So there will be verification documents that will be required.
Okay, thank you. And then Joanna, this one's for you. What if I have to furlough some of my employees after the PPP funds have been exhausted and we're still unable to open to full capacity to have enough revenue to keep them on payroll?
There's a lot of question that a lot of the hospitality industry actually calls me, all my existing clients, since they're still at 30-40% capacity. So they're still not able to, once the PPP funds, the one that they had are exhausted, they still can't rehire everybody else. So they do have to furlough them. So we do have, as of right now, I can't speak for what's going to happen in the next couple of months or until December, but until December 31st of this year to rehire everybody that actually qualifies in order for you. So basically your full-time staff. But like I said, you never know what's going to happen if the pandemic's going to be stretched out all the way there. So I can't speak definitely concerning that. But as of right now, as far as SBA goes, and Joe can confirm it, you have until the end of the year to rehire all your employees.
Thank you. And then another one for all the SBA COVID loan programs, how does a business show economic loss or economic injury to qualify for those?
I think, most of it's going to be based upon the revenues that the lack of revenues that have been generated, to show the decline in sales over the course of this pandemic. I think is probably going to be one of the larger, proof showing that they've actually had some loss. I mean, that's that's going to be the biggest portion of it, I believe.
Yeah, just add a little bit to that. I mean, it's pretty easy when you're reviewing financials from year-over-year standpoint, from 19 to 2020. Quarter to quarter, year over year, it's pretty evident to show that, and especially if you show multiple years of financials. So that's really what they're looking for at the end of the day.
And then Brian, just some clarification that we wanted to ask you. You said some of the SBA programs have prepayment penalties, but PPP does not have a penalty. And I just want to see if you could clear that up or make sure we have the right information.
Well, there is some impact. First of all, no, there's no prepayment penalty as long as it's forgiven. There is potentially a penalty if some of those funds are not selected to be forgiven, or they're not forgiven for whatever reason, whether the business didn't calculate and their accountant didn't calculate things correctly, or maybe they didn't adhere to the guidelines from the number of employees that you need to keep on staff through that process, which was the main driving force and a reason for the PPP program, in the first place. But for the most part, no, there is not.
And, just for all of those out there who are making sure that they have the right resource, what type of expert should a business have as their right hand? A CPA, bookkeeper? What do you guys recommend just from your experience of working on all these different types of programs?
Take that one, me. Always a CPA. I know it wasn't just the banks and the bankers that were kind of inundated. It was also the CPAs as well. And there was some confusion about kind of who was supposed to give guidance on that. A lot of customers expected the banks to do that, but it really wasn't something that they could do because it is an SBA program. Now we could give guidance and things that they would need, but that they would need to provide. But as far as the calculations go, for the most part, that was on the business owner. So, with the potential to not have a debt forgiven, absolutely, you should have a CPA involved in that discussion.
Thank you, Brian. And Joe, what type of documents should they keep to prove they spend their loans on the right things? What would you suggest?
Well, I think obviously if you've got payroll expense in there, you can have those checks, or you can have the verification of that. If you paid your utilities, that's another one that's eligible under this program. Utilities, rent payment, if you rent a business or rent a property. And then, there are some other items in there that you can have, but that's basically the main gist of what is going to be required, just the verification of those.
Okay, thank you. And then, Joanna, do you recommend a separate bank account for PPP or even the Eidl loan so that a business can probably keep track of their expenditures?
So I would say, depending on how sophisticated your current accounting system is. A lot of clients says, okay, my CPA can take care of all this. I have a bookkeeper that does all that, so I don't want to open another account. But for everybody that actually does it themselves, then yes, absolutely, make it simplify it. You can always close an account afterwards, but if you want to make it simple, open a separate account specifically. So there's your proof right there, where it went to, because everything's coming out of the same account. So yes, a lot of clients are actually doing that.
Perfect.
So we just have another.
Go ahead.
We just have another question that popped up. Can you apply only once for the PPP loan, or can you apply again if you need more money?
That's basically what the HEALS is all about. That's what the Congress is working on getting approved. So they want to extend it, especially right now that they're trying to shut down a lot of the states again. So we should know something, hopefully. Depends on how long it takes for them to agree the next couple weeks, I'm assuming.
So for clarification, I'll add one thing. Essentially, no, you can't right now as it sits, but that's something that is being worked on, in Washington by the House and the Senate. So we'll see, and that might very well be the case. This is a moving target, everything is moving constantly, and there's a lot of people that are involved with it. So I have hope, and I feel that probably will happen, but it's again beyond my pay grade, let's call it.
I didn't see an amount as far as what they were trying to get for that. I did see that they're trying to target businesses who are actually affected more than 50% in revenue. But that's the only thing that I saw concerning the extended PPP program.
And then I know a lot of people had this question, and Brian, Joe, Joanna, either one of you guys can answer this, but what can that program loan be used for? And say you end up not being eligible for the program after you receive the loan, what happens after that?
Which program, the PPP or the EIDL?
Either or, maybe if you can express on both what happens if you're not eligible afterwards to get it, and then what do people use a loan for on either the EIDL or the PPP?
So on PPP, there's specifically they use it for payroll. 60% has to be used for payroll, and the rest can be used for utilities and rent, things like that. Interest payments on loans. The EIDL loan can also be used for those things, but it can also be used for just general operating expenses throughout the business as it goes through the struggles of being affected by the pandemic.
And then, Joe, can you use the PPP to pay sales tax?
No, you cannot.
Thank you. And then another question that we had here is, can sole proprietors apply for PPP, and do they have to have an EIN? And Joanna, I think this is more up your lane here.
Yes, actually, US Bank in the very beginning actually focused on the single owner businesses, since our platform actually was already made for that. So we were able to focus on the businesses that actually didn't have any other resources to go to, and we were very proud of that. These are businesses who didn't have access to other funds, who didn't have access to other loans. So sole proprietors can do it. You don't need an EIN for it. A lot of the businesses that we were able to help, the 101,000 businesses that we were able to help, are actually a lot of them are sole proprietors and single owner businesses.
Thank you. And then a quick question for you, Brian. Is there anything wrong with not wanting the forgiveness and allowing that PPP to remain as a loan?
Just so I make sure that I understand it. If you have a customer that doesn't want it to be forgiven,
correct.
Well, I don't know that would be. I mean, if it's eligible for forgiveness, I really couldn't see any client doing that. But I've never had that question asked. I would have to. I would have to. I don't know that would be in the frequently asked questions on the SBA site. But, but it's.
Well, I'll expand on that a little bit, because if the funds are not used for payroll, utilities, or the designated items that are required by the program, then it will not be able to be forgiven. At that point, then they'll be structured into either the 24 or the 60-month payment program, depending on when they receive the funds. But it's at a 1% rate. So, the downside there is you're going to pay it off in 5 years max at a 1% rate. So that might be, advantageous for somebody if that's what they're looking to do.
Thank you, Joe. And I know that when this all started, a lot of people were running around if they weren't banking with somebody who was offering the SBA PPP or they weren't prepared. What advice would you give someone who does not have a good banking relationship and they need a PPP loan? Where should they go, and what advice to build those relationships?
Say that one more time.
Yeah. So what advice would you give somebody who does not have a good banking relationship and they need a PPP loan? I know that was a struggle in the beginning when people weren't sure where to go or they didn't have a good banking relationship. So what advice would you give those people?
I can say about US Bank, but unfortunately, like I said, we are closing today. But go to the nearest, if you have a banker, go to the nearest branch. If you're not working with a personal banker, you don't know anybody or a manager, this is the time when you see the importance of actually having a local bank that you go to, definitely during this time. But yes, go to any US bank normally, or go to your bank, go to a local community bank. I think a lot of them are still going to stay open until August 8th. So go visit if they're open, or make an appointment for the branches that are not closed. That are not open as soon as possible, since yes, like I said, you only have a week to do it.
And I would add to that
Thank
as
you.
well,
And
Sarah.
then, another couple questions that we still have is, where do people find, or where do they look to see who is still offering the SBA or taking PPP applications currently?
If you go to the SBA.gov, they have a website where you can check out, same thing, and it lists a lot of the active banks that are currently still accepting applications. A lot of them can still do it online. A lot of them, you probably just need to call and see if somebody can facilitate your application over the phone.
Great, thank you, Joanna. And Brian, a question for you, and frequently offered, so it's on here. Will the loans under the program be publicly disclosed?
Yeah, they are, and I assume you're talking about the program for the the Main Street lending program. Yeah, that's the information about the borrower, the guarantors, the business itself, and then how much they've borrowed is going to be available to the public. It's going to be released by the Fed.
Perfect. And also, I'm not sure if this was mentioned already, but the audit website has a list of active banks providing the Colorado SBA, what to expect during the loan forgiveness process and things like that. And so I know you guys have been all working with different clients and having different experiences. Would any of the three of you care to share an experience of somebody who's been able to get the loan and how that's really helped their business, whether it's the SBA PPP or Joe with the Eidl? Can you maybe share an experience with us?
Yeah, at the onset of the program, we've had, I know that all of us had quite a few customers that were calling and wanting to apply, and once we got the actual online application rolled out, it was a lot easier. And we've had good experiences and bad experiences, but most of them have had a pretty good, easy, smooth process of getting documents uploaded, all the verifications that they needed to move forward with those programs. The Eidl, that one, we've had a few of the people do those as well, and it seems to be pretty smooth. I know the SBA administers that program, so it was kind of a little bit behind there at the beginning because a lot of people were applying for those loans, but it finally thinned out a little enough to where they were getting some attention relatively soon after applying for the loan. So,
Sarah, I wanted to add one thing. Just a couple questions ago, somebody asked, if they don't have a good quality financial institution relationship or partnership, what they should do in recommendation. And the first thing is the time's running out. So make sure that you're prepared. And I think that this is has been a good learning lesson for a lot of small businesses of having good documentation and keeping track of your business and your payroll and all those things. It's always been amazing to me because there are a lot of small businesses there that don't really have a good gauge of those numbers and how that looks. And that really was impactful to them and slowed down the process because they weren't as organized and they didn't have a good system in place, or they weren't actively using accounting systems to keep track of everything. Some folks who would ask how much you spent on payroll, they didn't even know. And certainly a big disadvantage for those clients and makes it a job. But banks still can do those loans for non-customers. I mean, I think Joanna mentioned we did over 100,000 just U.S. Bank, and 10,000 of those loans went to non-customers of U.S. Bank. We just either the bank discontinued the process or it wasn't offering it. So we took over those clients and were able to serve them. So that's probably one of the most gratifying things that I've had. And I know that there's a lot of stories from a lot of different lenders, but just to be able to help really non-customers that we didn't know from Adam, and they were really kind of left out when it comes to their current financial institution. So be able to help those folks keep their businesses open and operate, and also employ other people and help families was a lot of stress, but it was very impactful and something certainly kept us going.
Thank you, Brian. And then Joanna, I think you said you had a story you wanted to share as well.
It's actually a combination of a lot of stories. I know a lot of my clients are actually watching, everybody that I help personally to facilitate their loans. There was a lot of late night phone calls, late night texts, late night emails, but we were able to get there. I got to know everybody. I thought I knew my clients already, but when I was talking to them on nearly every hour, thank you. I'm really humbled that you guys chose to partner with me. But yes, I particularly the ones that I want to focus on, and kind of like what Brian was saying, the single owner businesses, the ones that don't have a lot of revenue. This is their Hail Mary. This is the last resort. And you could see the desperation in their voice and the fact that you're the only one left fighting for them and making sure that their documents are correct, making sure that they filled out the application correctly. I'm getting emotional thinking about like all those late night phone calls I've had with every single one of the, most likely the restaurants. We have a lot. We personally bank, and the restaurants were really struggling, and this was their only hope. So that was really, really gratifying, being able to help them get through the finish line and getting their funds, and just celebration that we did afterwards whenever all these clients called me personally with just a sigh of relief and almost crying when they finally got their loans.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think we can, all really relate and see, the impact that it's having. And I think having the resources that, you guys and other banks have been able to offer and navigating this pandemic has been so important. And so, someone has online PPP providers approve loans for people that don't have the chance for forgiveness. What is the one piece of advice you would give to those businesses who maybe don't have those opportunities? And then what's one piece of advice? Yeah.
Just as a little follow-up information, there's been a lot of small businesses that have requested the help of our office, to help financials get put together. And they're like, oh, we got a PPP loan from Cabbage or some other online vendor. But the reality is they had no chance for forgiveness in the first place. They really didn't have the financials in place to be able to bring people back on board by a certain amount of time, even in December at this point. What kind of advice would you give people that are in a loan with an online vendor? Some online ones are great. Like Intuit is doing a good job because it's actually tied to the bookkeeping service that the person has. But really, there's some others out there that aren't tied to any kind of financial tracking. So what would you say to those businesses who got an online loan?
Same thing. I would tell them to partner up with a bookkeeper. Are you telling that they don't have a chance for forgiveness just because they don't have employees, or I'm not really sure as far as or did they just not have the documentation, kind of like what Brian is saying?
Yeah, they didn't have the cash flow to be able to, they shouldn't have gotten the loan in the first place. But some, there's some lenders that are giving out loans saying, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. This loan will get you through. You'll be able to hire back people by December. But really, it's really not enough money to really get them out of the hole that they probably already were in.
I think that's when the good faith form, and Joe, if you can help me out as far as more information concerning the good faith. If they still can't bring back any of their employees, and they did talk about that, as long as they can provide a good faith documentation. I'm not really sure the specifics concerning that. Do you know a little bit more concerning it?
Not specifically on that, but yeah, you're right. That it does provide them with some additional relief if they do have some circumstances that kind of force them to, whether they close permanently or just can't hire people back at this time. And there are some businesses that still aren't open, so those are ones that have been affected drastically.
Right. And you can actually, if you still have the funds for it, you can give the money back, right, Joe? So
yeah, that is correct. Yep.
That's sitting there.
You can pay the loan back, yes.
Thank you. And is there any more, any other questions that you can think of here? I know that we've kind of shared different experiences and questions, and I didn't know if maybe there was some out there from the Facebook Live that we can't see.
so far. I just really want to stress the importance of what you are all talking about. You know, there's a lot of Hail Marys out there right now to help our small business community, but if you don't have your financials in order, or if you're not strategically planning with your finances for the next round of disasters, you're going to have some long-term issues. You know, we've at the BBB and SBDC, we've worked with clients through 3 disasters already: Waldo Canyon, Black Forest, the floods here in the Pikes Peak region. And now we've got one that's quite different. But what we saw was there's so many businesses that weren't ready for anything, right? And then this hit, and it's so long-term that there's just, you know, it's really hard to get out of that hole. So that financial planning, having your paperwork in order, Brian, as you mentioned, I mean, all of that is so incredibly important. So I just want to stress that this information you're getting today from our experts is just extremely valuable, and they're here to answer your questions. So we have a few minutes. If you have any questions, you know, get them into Facebook. But otherwise, how, you know, U.S. Bank is closing on PPP right now, and you may reopen it. Joe, as far as SBA goes, you know, where loans. I know Pikes Peak, SBDC, BBB, we have all that information as well. But where, you know, all of these things keep changing. There's like a change in these loans every single day, right? Like, what's next? Where do you keep up on all of that information? Or where can a business go?
Yeah, and that I would say go to the SBA's website. They're going to have the most current and accurate information out there because, like you said, it's changing all the time. The program changes. I know that changed from the time that they initiated the first round. The second round changed a little bit. So there are, you know, they're going to have the most accurate and up-to-date information on the website through the SBA.gov's website.
Okay, very good. Yes, sir.
This is just a plea to, I'm not whining or anything, but it's a plea for other financial institutions and bankers out there. Just be patient with your lender because this is a federal program. This is SBA. A lot of the things changed. It was a moving target. The rules were changing constantly. They weren't releasing that very effectively and efficiently. So your lending institution, whoever that may be, was really aiming at a moving target, and that's not just be patient with the process. I know sometimes it's difficult to do that when you have some stress, but the banks are doing the best that they can to administer really something for the SBA that they never would have been able to do on their own without the help of financial institutions across the United States.
I'm really glad you brought that up because here's the thing. Our banks, U.S. Bank, and our banks in our community should be celebrated and given very large awards of thank you, because you're absolutely right. You know, as being a research partner of the SBA, we would get information as it comes out. But really, you know, at the very highest of levels, the communication was going so rapidly between the Treasury and the SBA and the CARES Act, all this stuff, that once it hit you guys, I mean, you had to be ready. And I think U.S. Bank did a fabulous job of making sure all your ducks were in the row. Brian, we had talked about how you were putting together the online form so that things could be processed a lot faster. And guess what? At the end of the day, you're in the top 5 for a number of loans that were generated on PPP. So I just really want to commend all of you for such an amazing job. And banks should be celebrated. I mean, there's no reason to have a loan on the books for 5 years for 1%. You did this for the good of the community. I mean, you really did. And I think people need to understand that. And having you here with today to talk about that is, we're very, very thankful for that. Sarah, any last final thoughts as we close up for the day?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for allowing us this platform. And as we think through the best ways to support our small business customers, we hope that these resources and actions are useful to help small businesses navigating this challenging time. And we really look forward to our partnerships with all of you in the community. And so I hope you took away some nuggets here. Know that we're still here locally if you need any of us. And we're hoping to get through this together and champion you guys. And thank you again for the platform.
Hey,
yes, sir.
I have one thing I'd like to say. I want to thank you and SBDC, and then also John and the BBB for continuing to be committed to the small businesses. This was not, I mean, we're all changing and doing things differently. This is the first time we've done anything like this, which I think it's fabulous. But just there had to have been a time where about both you or Jonathan or each individually, that should we do this right now, and how is it going to work, and what's going to happen, and the fact that you did still, and you found a way, and we've made it free for those businesses out there. I think it's a great example of how you have to adapt, and you have to just keep rowing the boat. And you guys have done a great job with this thus far, and we're pleased and honored to be a part of this, and what great job you do across the, compared to everybody in the nation. So great job.
Thank you so much. We actually have a last minute question. If we have a couple minutes, we can answer it. Someone on Facebook said they need to be connected with a banker for the Eidl loan process. Can you work with US Bank for this, or who should he work with for Eidl?
So the Eidl loans are administered directly through the SBA's website. So they'll need to go to, if they log on to go to sba.gov, and on the very first page there, it's going to have a link to, it says learn more, and you'll click on that, and then you'll have to scroll down just a few, but the application process is right there on their website, and you have to go directly through them. We can't help you in that.
Yeah, the SBA processes those loans direct, correct, Joe?
Correct.
Yeah, so there's quite a few videos on the pikespeaksbdc.org/prepare website that you can watch on how to apply for the Eidl, and we also have a version in Spanish also, and one for nonprofits. So take a look at that. Between the BBB and SBDC, we are here to support you, answer your questions. We have consultants that can help walk you through that process as well. For the Eidl loan, also known as Eidl. Let's just say Eidl. Moving forward, it's a lot easier.
American Idol.
Eidl. I want to thank you all again for being here today. For those of you watching, this type of support is not over. Meeting with a banker can happen every day. Building the relationship with your banker should happen every day. And if you haven't been able to do that yet, find a bank really supports your type of business. It's, call Brian. I'm going to have everyone call Brian. Call US Bank. They can help you find, if you're not the right fit for them, I guarantee you they'll find you the right fit. It's a very close banking community. We're here to support you. So today's information does not end. Remember, you have support for as long as you need, especially during COVID relief efforts through Small Business Week and through the Better Business Bureau and Small Business Development Center. Tomorrow up next is our event called Supporting Minority-Owned Businesses. As I mentioned before, this is a very special workshop that we added during our series. US Bank asked if we could, and we said absolutely. We want to make sure that we talk about access to capital. What is there for minority-owned businesses? How can we as a community shop small and shop minority-owned? How can minority-owned businesses work with the Minority Business Office of Colorado to open up opportunities and get certifications and so forth? So tomorrow, that event is from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can register at pikespeaksbdc.org. You can Google Small Business Week Pikes Peak Region, go to our Facebook page, register from there. Again, it's all free. You can find the live stream right here on Facebook and on the pikespeaksbdc.org website. Thank you all for joining us today and joining us for the week of celebration and support for small business. Have a wonderful day.